Mr. Rudy Hernandez, thank you very much for returning to theboxingbar.com and welcome, man.
Glad to be of service.
And Rudy, man, you've had a lot of recent success in the last few weeks, with all your different fighters, but let's go ahead and bring up Mike Alvarado first. Let's go ahead and talk about the first fight that you had with Mike Alvarado, or one of the ones I remember you seen with him against Prescott. What do you remember about that particular fight and watching Alvarado go into the last round with him? You had your hands full with all the cuts that Alvarado was going through. What do you remember about that particular fight?
After the end of the ninth round, we were pretty upset that he had given up the ninth round because we felt that both that ninth and the 10th round were really necessary for him to win. And so when he pretty much gave up that ninth round, we told him that he needed, pretty much when I was done working on his cuts and had, said a few things to him before he stood up to the stool. Well, the moment he got up from the stool, I told him that anything and everything he had ever worked for was lying on his next round, and he needed to knock the guy out. And he went out there and then just he put in the work, it's not luck. I don't think it's lucky. I just think that, he went out there and he executed and won.
But your skills were also put to work. As far as doing the cuts and, his lip was busted open, his eyes were all messed up, his confidence seemed to be a little bit down going into that round. What was your duty at that time in your mind?
Well, we'd have to go back all the way to the third round. I think it was the third round when he got hit in the eye, I think, and he says, "I can't see out of my eye." And it was just it's just a quick reaction. I said, well, I told him, shut the fuck up, and you still have one more eye. And he just looked at me, and he was like, he jumped out of that, oh yeah, I do have another eye. So, and from that moment on, things changed, and I guess we had a connection there where he knew that I was there to help him and assist him as best as I could. So, we kept him in the fight. It was sure he was bleeding from the eye and the mouth, but but we were able to control that and keep him in the fight, and we ended up winning. So,
what did you think of the stoppage? A lot of people were disputing that. What did you think of that actual stoppage? Do you think it was a correct stoppage?
It was the referee's call. He's there. He's the one seeing everything at close range, and whatever referee decides to do, I'm good with. Whether it's on the winning or losing side. Because the same thing could be said about the fight with Brandon Reels, the first one. So I respect the referee's judgment, and they're the ones that are there, and they're the ones that are there to make that call. It's not mine to make.
A few minutes ago, you just brought up the word connection. What connection do you have with Mike Alvarado, him being a tough guy in and out of the ring? What connection do you think you have with him, as far as an advisor, as far as a friend, as far as how do you connect with him out and in the ring?
Well, pretty much it's mainly in the ring. More about just in the ring, because on his personal and outside of the ring, that's a place where I rarely ever get involved unless I'm asked, or if he asks me a question, I'll answer. If there's something that I need to tell him or I want to say to him, I'll do that. But it's more in boxing, and the connection that we have in boxing is that he trusts me. I've earned his trust, and he trusts the things that I say to him, and I explain things to him so that he knows why I want to do certain things or why we're doing certain things, and so it makes it a little easier for him understanding.
He's had some crazy words. He had that fight with Prescott. After that, he had that fight with Herrera, who was a pretty difficult fighter, even though a lot of people considered Herrera to be like a punching bag to Alvarado and their fight together. Alvarado had some trouble taking him out of that one. Then he went ahead and fought that fight with Rios, where he lost that one, but then he avenged it in this last fight. But through all those, let's say, 4 fights that Alvarado's had, which fight were you most happy with? Obviously it might be the last one, but what fight do you think that, you helped the most of the last 4 fights?
Well, the first fight was with Prescott. I helped him get him through up to the 10th round, and I remember that I was a big assistance to the manager and trainer that night, even in the corner, as far as giving the advice and taking care of him and talking to him as well. In that fight, I think that was a come from behind win, and that's kind of like the beginning. And then the next fight, well, I was really involved with Brandon Reels' second fight. I was more involved in that one, and I was pretty much given the head coach job in that fight.
And before that first fight with Brandon Reels, you and I both talked about it before that fight, and we were discussing on, we both think, of course, I'm an Alvarado fan, and I've always been open about it. And a lot of people, doubt me because I'm from Oxnard, and Brandon is too. But we both thought that Alvarado was, we're confident that he was probably going to take that one. From seeing Alvarado going into that first fight to seeing how he went into the ring on this last fight, what difference did you see in his attitude or physically or emotionally how he was before walking in the ring from this fight to last fight?
Well, the first fight was I thought that we had the edge in everything, but slightly. It wasn't a whole lot, but just slightly. Where he was bigger, stronger, and it was his weight division. But little did we know that Brandon was fighting. We always knew that he was fighting to make the 135-pound limit. So coming up at 140, he was just going to be just that much stronger. And but I always thought that we had just a slight edge over him. And so we're always confident that our guy's going to win, right? So, but the second fight, it changed completely. I mean, you can see the difference between one and the other. I mean, it's like that fight was like night and day. But it still brought excitement, and it still brought, Mike showed that he has a lot of skills, and that he was an overall athlete. He did well in wrestling, and one of the things that I learned about him is that he just does not like to lose. He doesn't like to lose, and he wanted to be the best that he could be, and he worked at it. He put in the work. He gave me what I wanted and what I needed from him in the gym, and I thought that it played well. When fight time came, he was focused and he knew what needed to be done, and he executed the plan as we had planned it in the gym.
And the morning of that fight, I remember I came on the Frank and Bobby show, and they asked me who I thought was going to win. I said Alvarado by decision. And, I remember referring to that fight, the first fight with Chiquita Gonzalez and Michael Carbajal. Carbajal won that fight in the 7th round by knockout, just like Rios had won, their fight in the 7th round by knockout. And I said, you know what, for some reason I have a feeling that Mike Alvarado is smart enough to adapt and to adjust and to be that smart to somehow outbox him in the rematch, just like Chiquita Gonzalez did against Carbajal in their rematch. It so happened, as stupid as a prediction that might have been, that was exactly what happened. What do you think of Alvarado? How did you see him walking into that fight? And what was the game plan in your guys' mind in his training camp? What plan did you guys have for him to execute on that particular day to get that win?
It was stay focused and in control. So those are the things that we worked on in the gym, and I had told him I had told him a number of times that you need to stay focused and in control. And when I mean in control, you get hit, you suck it up, but you don't lose control. Stay focused, and we have a fight that you're going to have to execute almost to a T, so you're able to get the win. And if you notice that right from the get go, he was focused and in control. And the only reason he got hit because he chose to stand there and fight, and that's who Mike is. But I needed a little bit of Mike, and I needed a little bit of our strategy, and we combined both of them, and we were able to get the win.
And round 2, he was rocked a bit, and a lot of people thought he was going to be going down in that round, and he was able to stay up and finish the round and, of course, finish the fight. But what did you think at that moment when he did look rocked in the second round?
I was worried. I'm not going to say, oh, no, I knew he'd walk through it. No, I mean, I was worried, man. I felt like I got socked the chin as well, and as every second went by, I got a little bit more comfortable, but it was hard to see it at first, but he weathered the storm and came back. And one thing that we do know about Mike is that he's got a lot of heart, and he's going to fight you as best as he can, and there's no surrendering in him. And it was a great round for him. As far as like surviving it, it was great that he was able to. And when you saw what happened in the third round, he came back and let everyone know that he was here when he rocked Rios.
And you said you got comfortable there, and it seemed like you got comfortable in the corner, too. It seemed like you just took over the corner. I mean, you went from being Mr. Cutman to, being the whole corner there, pretty much. They kept bringing it up, the commentators on HBO. They kept saying, Rudy's taking over the corner. He's getting good advice from Rudy. Did something like come upon you to step up and just start spitting everything, all these instructions to Mike, or was that part of, your guys' plan for you to pretty much take over there?
I would never disrespect a trainer or anybody else in a corner. I'm there to assist, and But this is something that was talked about in the locker room between the manager and Sean, who's always been his trainer. I just happened to be the trainer for this fight, and it was said that Sean would be the guy with the microphone, and he'd be the one that be. I didn't really want that role of, you know how when in these fights they put that audio so they can hear what you're saying, and so they put it on Sean, and it was great because we had already agreed that the first first 2 rounds that Sean would be the one that talks, and then after that I'd be taking over. Well, after the second round, that's when he got rocked, but it was our plan that I would be taking over from the second round up because I had been working with Mike that month. So, and Mike was used to getting instructions from me. And, like I said, we had that connection, and so I just saw the fight last week, and I'm noticing, I can see that Mike and I had that connection where I'm talking, he's looking straight at me and listening to everything that I'm saying, and it just made everything a little easier for all of us,
And I agree because I think everybody, did see Mike's eyes focus on you the whole time while, the instructions are being given, and I think that's why they might have said what they did. Going into, let's say, the 8th, 9th, 10th round, were you pretty confident that you guys were on top on the scorecards or to get that decision?
No, I didn't, because you never know what a judge is thinking. I'm seeing a fight, you're seeing a fight, and we're all seeing different things. And I know what I like, but this is one fight that I couldn't. My whole thing was like taking it round by round because anything can happen in a fight like this. With these guys, being as great as they are. Brandon is a great fighter, man. He's got a lot of heart. He comes to win, and he gives it 110%, and so does Mike. So you can't get comfortable, until the end of the last bell, and then I can breathe again, because at first, man, it was just hard, and my whole thing was just to keep them in the fight and keep them focused and in control and do what I'm supposed to do, and at the end, the judges saw the fight and, saw it in our favor, and Mike was able to execute the plan, and he got the win, and now he's the champion of the world.
When the decision was given and Mike was awarded the match and all, and Brandon seemed to be a little upset about that. Of course, every time 2 fighters do a great job like that, they each think that they won the fight by the end of the fight. Was there animosity, afterwards, after, let's say Mike got back to the locker room? Was he a little upset of how Brandon's reaction was for that fight, or did he pretty much understand that he was upset?
No. That wasn't even an issue, man. It wasn't even a thought because, again, man, when you have guys like them with the type of personalities that they have, and these guys are winners, man. It's like they can't lose. They don't want to lose, but hey, emotions are flying all over. The adrenaline is pumping, man, and Brandon wouldn't be Brandon if he didn't act the way he acted. It's just nature, and we have nothing but respect for him. It's like it's funny that even in the first fight, these guys have always been nothing but respectful towards each other, and and even the teams, all of us have been respectful towards each other because at the end of the day, man, we got 2 top-notch guys that are pretty much like equals in a lot of ways. It's like they fight, it's like pretty much fighting in the mirror.
And you're right, that we were all winners that night, whether it been either them 2 or us, the boxing fans, or anybody in attendance that day, we're all winners that day, just watching that fight and being a part of that. What would your opinion be on if you were the management or promoter of Mike Alvarado and you were, wearing that hat? What would you advise Mike to do? Would you say a rematch right off the bat, or would you say take a fight or 2 before you do another match with Brandon? What would you advise at that point?
Right now it's pretty much on what Top Rank wants to do. Whatever they decide to do. I mean, they're the ones that have guided the career of these 2 fighters, and look at the exceptional job that they've done with them. And whatever they decide to do, I'm okay with it. If it's an immediate rematch, why not? Let's do it. If not, then they went. Whatever they decide to do, I'm good with. Because again, I have a job to do, and I do my job. Promoters have a job to do; they do theirs, and Top Rank is one of the top promotions of all time that has made stars out of so many fighters. So, hey, they know what they're doing. They couldn't be wrong or have done what they've done if they didn't know what they were doing, right?
Yeah, that's true. And just to get it off, get it off people's minds here, coming from you, Rudy, there's a lot of people that I've read, especially after the fight, a lot of people are saying that, Alvarado should leave his corner people and jump with you. But I know, like you said, a little bit ago, and after the fight, you said you weren't stepping on anybody's toes. You were just doing your job. What would you say to those people that are saying, you should step in to be the front guy on that team?
That's a decision that they would have to make. That's not me. I do my job and I do it to the best of my abilities, and I don't care who it is. If it's a 4-rounder or a 12-rounder, I'm going to give it 110%. At the end of the day, whatever, if that's what Mike decides to do or not to do, then that's on Mike. He has a manager, Henry Delgado, who's like he's involved in everything that Mike does as well, and it's a decision that they would have to make, And but like I said, man, that's up to them.
This last Friday on ESPN Friday Night Fights on the main event, you were on the corner of Nugaev against Marcielo. Again, you were pretty much put on the spotlight. Everybody was kind of tuned into you to see if you were going to be able to pull it off. Marcielo was undefeated, 19-0 against your guy that was supposed to lose, and us in attendance there were delighted to see that fight. And at first, it just looked like the undefeated fighter was just going to take over your guy. And as next thing you know, everybody saw the pendulum, slowly turning to the other side. Your guy started getting the upper hand somehow. He started getting the stronger punches. The other guy was wearing down. Next thing you know, just that one punch, bam, knockout, almost, reminiscent to that, Pacquiao and Marquez fight, the last one. And, down he goes, and your guy wins. What type of, what do you feel like when you get that type of win, when you get that type of glory, when you get that type of attention, when your fighters actually win? What do you feel inside? How do you feel about your fighter when he gets that victory?
Look, man, I like to consider myself a winner. I'm a winner. I don't take losing lightly, and I don't like it. It doesn't sit well with me. There's been a few times that I've taken on the job of working with a guy that I know that it doesn't stand much of a chance, but even those guys deserve to have somebody in their corner that's going to protect them or help them, at least not to get hurt. So, I once turned down a 4-rounder. I think I told him that I would not help him. I told him he was a loser, big time loser. So, and I'd be embarrassed to get in the goddamn ring with him, to go up there with him. And but then when I walked away and I thought about it, I'm like, you know what, that sucks, man, because nobody really wants to work with the guy, And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take on. I'm going to take him on and at least be there to try to help him or save him from major damage. So I went back the next day and I told the guy, all right, man, I'll work with you. And I didn't get. I don't even think I charged them. I said, man, you can give your money. And I went to help him. And then at that time, that's when I realized that being a good coach also means being able to help others. Even though if they're not going to do well or they're not going to make big money or even get a good payday, but you do it because you love the sport and you don't want to see. You want everybody to get a fair shake. So I'm mostly all about winning, though. And when the guys win, I feel good, especially for them. When we lose, and if I feel like even if it was a close fight, I'm happy for the other guy as well because I know that he put in the sacrifice, he put in the work as well, just like my fighter or any other fighter out there. So I've learned that it's okay. You can be happy for the other guy too as well.
And what do you think of Nugaev's, his future? What do you think of him coming up or to fight against, these top guys at his weight? Do you think he has a pretty good, bright future in the sport?
Well, you saw what he did on Friday. Is like he was a huge underdog, and he hadn't fought in almost 2 years. And so, but when you have some skills, then you put him to work. He's not a bad fighter. He's not a great fighter, but he's not a bad fighter either. And I'll tell you that there's a lot of good fighters out there that think that they're a lot better than what they really are. And there's guys like Gustav that that are going to shock you. You know, they put you in your place. And Friday, Jonathan was put in this place. You know, where okay, you're good, but you're not as good as you thought you probably were, or management. You know, and there's guys like him that are always in the gym, that take care of themselves, and they put in the work, and it pays off. You know, look, it paid off. Look where he's at. He won.
And what do you think of all the traveling, all this stuff that you do? You know, you're always out on the road. You know, every time I see you on the social network like Facebook and stuff, you're always out on the road, going to Japan, going to, you know, from city to city, it seems like. Does that affect your home life? Does that affect your family? Does that affect you personally, you know, not being home or not knowing what tomorrow's going to bring?
No, because my wife understands that unless I go out to work, then I can't bring a paycheck. So she understands that I have to go to work, and so that's my job. And when she met me knowing that this is what I did, and she took on that task with me. And besides, man, to be honest with you, that's probably what keeps me married. She gets a break from me every time I take off. So you know.
And a lot of us that know you, you know, like especially like me that knows you from like Facebook, and I've talked to you a few times, of course, and all. We all see how we joke around or we mess around, and there's some people that might take offense to it. You know, especially like how I always joke around and bring up your brother, and you make fun of your brother and stuff, and people say, how can he, you know, talk like that, you know, about his own brother, you know, that's deceased and stuff. But what people don't understand, yeah, I think what people don't understand is that's how close you are to your brother. That's probably how much you miss him and love him, that you still talk about him as if he's still around, because in a way he's still alive to you, and I'm sure that's how you see it. Isn't that correct?
Look, man, as long as I'm alive, that little bitch is always going to be around, too. You know? So, I mean, people can take it the way they want to. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's your relationship with your brother, and they should, you know. But what's your next What's your next assignment? I know you're all over the MMA and boxing now and stuff. What's your next assignment? Where are you going to go from here?
I go to Vegas this weekend with UFC, and then I'm home for 2 weeks. You know, I hope my wife is able to deal with me for the next 2 weeks. Then I go to New Jersey for the UFC show on April 27th out in New Jersey. So we get around. You know, we got but I mean, like I want to leave my mark in boxing. You know, that's where, you know, I love both sports, man. I love the MMA, and I love boxing. You know, but I've always been about boxing, and I just want to showcase the skills that these fighters have. You know, that can be brought out, and have them be the best that they can be, you know, and I can be a part of it and assisting.
Well, I think you've showcased your talents. I mean, the last time before we talked, the first time, it was a few weeks before you were going to get inducted into the California Boxing Hall of Fame. You did get inducted into the California Boxing Hall of Fame on October 20th of last year. How did it feel? How did that go? What did you think of that, you know, getting that accolade or getting that under your belt to get inducted into a local Hall of Fame in your own state?
That was kind of like something that I really wasn't looking forward to it, because I feel like I still got a lot more to accomplish, you know. One of like Mike Alvarado beating Brandon Rios. That's a huge accomplishment, you know. It's one of those moments in life, you know, that you'll treasure. You say, well, you know, like when you look back and you say, okay, you know, what the events or moments in your life that you have that stand out. Well, him, you know, winning stands out. That's something that I'll have, you know, that I cherish. And so, but you know, coming back to the Hall of Fame, I mean, it's cool, but I still believe that there's more. I still have more to offer, and I hope that one day I can really say that I earned that right, you know.
Well, I mean, you're obviously in the last month, you know, making a big name for yourself, and right before you got inducted into the California Boxing Hall of Fame, the week before was the first fight with Rios and Alvarado, where, you know, Alvarado, you know, lost that fight, but then you redeemed yourself a few weeks ago, you know, with that win, and all the, you know, glory that came with that, and, you know, to your whole team. Mike Alvarado, have you heard from him, or have you heard anything about what his next match is or what his next step is thus far?
While I was in Japan, he was having surgery here in Los Angeles. Something with a torn ligament or tendon in his finger. So from after the fight, so that got taken care of while I was in Japan. So when I got back Tuesday, he was gone. I think he left on Monday or Tuesday back to Denver. And I don't you know, just through Facebook, like I just see what he posts, and that's it. You know, I don't I gave him the space and let him enjoy his time right now because he's in cloud nine.
And I'm sure you're in cloud nine too, my friend. And thank you very much for returning to theboxingbar.com. And of course, my house is your house here all the time. And thank you again, man. Thank you very much for coming on.
Until next time.
Thanks, Rudy, brother. We'll talk to you later, my man.